Hi, everyone. It's Thursday, April 2nd. I'm Karen Connolly, a member of the Board of Selectmen. I'm here with Jim Boudreau, our town administrator, and Ron Griffin, superintendent of schools, to give you an update on what's going on in Scituate with COVID-19. Jim?
Thank you, Karen. So currently, right now, we have 29 confirmed cases of COVID-19 here in Scituate. That's up from the 21 earlier in the week. That is as of last night. At this point, almost half of those cases have finished their quarantine period. And I know there's some confusion about that, as how come people ought to be off their quarantine. What happens in some of these cases is people will develop one or more minor symptoms. They will self-quarantine. They will report that self-quarantine to a healthcare professional. Their symptoms either worsen or they develop more symptoms. Then they go for testing. The testing can take up to 5 or more days to come back. So by the time they've been in quarantine for several days, 5+ days or more for testing, we get notified that 14-day quarantine period has almost expired. So that's a good thing. The numbers keep going up. If you've been watching the news, the surge is coming. The next 2 weeks are going to be the worst 2 weeks we hope we will face, and after that we hope it will turn down, so those numbers will go up. The good thing, at the risk of jinxing ourselves, we do not have any fatalities in Scituate as of yet, so we hope that keeps going. The next 2 weeks we'll test our resolve and we'll test our healthcare system, so we're asking people, again, stay home, stay safe, stay in. If you need to go out, stay apart. Governor Baker this week updated the list of businesses that are essential and exempt from the stay-at-home directives that were issued. The list is continuously changing. When he issued the list, gun stores were considered essential. Within 3 hours, gun stores were no longer essential and had to close. So we are reviewing that list to make sure we are in compliance, particularly with our 2 construction projects. We have asked for additional guidance from the state, and we will take whatever guidance they get, and we will make sure that we are in compliance with those new regulations. I want to draw people's attention to a letter that Chief Scituate posted on the police department website. If you haven't seen it, please go to the website or the police department Facebook page, and it just emphasizes the need for people to stay home and social distance. The police will enforce people gathered at parks and playgrounds and not social distance and tell them to move along. But we need the parents especially to step up of the teenage children who seem to be the one congregating. We see them in large numbers in their cars. We get calls that they're congregating in groups. You need to make sure you keep your children home and safe and keep them from congregating, if not for themselves, for the sake of others. We are seeing that. Luckily, right now the bad weather is helping us, but as the chief said, April 2020 will define this local pandemic. Now is a critical time. By keeping your family safe, you will be keeping all of us safe. Please note the Scituate Police Department will be here for you throughout this uncertain time, but everyone has a responsibility to act according to the established pandemic guidelines. Take it seriously. Act now. What I would add to that is if we find out that some of our places like the Lighthouse, like Driftway Park, and our beaches are getting to the point where people are not social distancing, where they're not taking this seriously, then the board is going to have to consider closing those places to the public. The town of Hull has already requested that the state close the parking lots in Hull. I've spoken to Duxbury and Plymouth. They are both considering the same thing. I know the Duxbury town manager said last weekend when it was nice, Duxbury Beach looked like the 4th of July. And there was no social distancing. There was no social distancing in the parking lot. So if people are unable to do it themselves, then we are going to have to take some action ourselves. We don't want to do that, but please, when you go out, make sure you social distance, you keep apart. Yesterday was a deadline for stickers at the transfer station. I know that causes a lot of angst in town. The treasurer's office has been working diligently to process those online applications. At this point, we've instructed the transfer station employees that they are not to turn away anyone who has an expired sticker. We are going to give a 2-week grace period at this point to allow people to catch up and the treasurer's office to catch up. People have been fantastic. At this point, we've processed 1,783 stickers. That's down slightly from last year. We were at 1,935, so people have been doing a great job. So we'll give you a 2-week grace period. After that 2 weeks, we will reevaluate and see where those numbers lie and make a decision whether we continue that or not. I know people have asked in these unprecedented times why the town doesn't waive the sticker fees. And the answer to that is the transfer station is an enterprise account. They receive no funds from the general tax revenue. All the money used to run the transfer station, to pay the employees, to dispose of the waste, comes from the stickers and the disposal costs that we charge. If we waive the fees, we will not have the cash in the accounts to pay the employees. So think of the transfer station as its own separate business that runs off the business of selling its stickers, selling its bags, and charging people for the disposal of their construction equipment and things like that. So we can't keep it open and waive the fees, but we will give people a grace period at this point to get their stickers online, let the treasurer process them, and send them out. Small business owners, state and federal governments have both set up programs for small business owners. Contact your local chamber of commerce, contact your lender, they can give you information on these programs, or call your state and federal legislatures and they can help you. There are some programs out there to help you. I was asked what's the biggest question we're getting in the town hall. Really the biggest question we seem to be getting now revolves around the deadline for taxes, which is March 1st. Property taxes are due. Whether the town is going to postpone that deadline. The answer to that is we can't. The deadline for taxes is set by the state, so we cannot waive that ourselves. There are proposals at the state level, one of which would extend that deadline to June 1st at local option. A second would allow a town to either waive the penalties, the interest, or both on late payments. Neither one of those have passed, so at this point we cannot change that deadline, but the town, like a business, like the transfer station, we rely on those taxes. That's our revenue to keep running. So if this legislation passes, the board will have to consider that, but if people don't pay their taxes, we'll be just like a business. Our cash flow will dry up, and we'll have to start letting employees go because we won't have the money to pay them. So the short answer is we can't change that, but the long answer is we're going to have to take it seriously and consider it, but it will have potentially serious negative impacts on our ability to do business. The last thing, even though this is a COVID-19 update, Chief Murphy, I think, is smiling a little bit that he can deal with actually a storm instead of COVID-19. We are expecting a storm starting today into Saturday. Potential for coastal flooding. Tomorrow's high tide and Saturday's high tide. In the morning, those are both abnormally high tides. Winds 20 miles per hour, gusting to 30 into the 50s. We expect minor coastal floodings. We expect the potential for some limbs down, and we expect the potential for some minor power outages. So, Scituate, you know how to deal with these things. It's just one other thing we'd have to deal with on top of everything else. So be careful, particularly driving around the coast this weekend, especially tomorrow morning and Saturday morning when we have the high tides. That's what I have for today.
Thanks, Jim. I guess that's Mother Nature telling us to stay inside, folks. Ron?
Very good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me today. So I appreciate the information that goes out to our community, and the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted every facet of life, and schools are certainly no exception for that. As I'm sure you know, Governor Baker issued an emergency executive order closing all Commonwealth schools through till May 4th. Measures like self-quarantine and school closures, social distancing, they've transformed the fabric of our society entirely. We recognize these are important steps, and Scituate Public Schools is committed to supporting our families, our students, and our community as we combat the virus together. With some guidance from the state, SPS will be transitioning to distance learning for the next several weeks. The goal of distance learning is to support our students, support their well-being, support their academic progress, while also understanding that these conditions for teaching and learning are unlike anything we've ever seen before. We appreciate that distance learning can't necessarily replicate classroom instruction, but it's going to be our goal to help our students continue to make academic progress. So through this week, teachers will be continuing with ungraded enrichment materials, and they'll be using this week as a ramp-up week to distance learning, which will kick off on April 6th. This morning, our families received an email and a voicemail from our school district, from myself, that outlines the Scituate Public Schools distance learning plan. You can get a copy of that framework by just clicking on the hyperlink in your email. You can also get it directly on our website as well. We have a fast link there that's called Distance Learning. The icon is a book. Distance learning has basically four components to it. It's an asynchronous distance learning model, and the components are this. So the first is just virtual educator planning and collaboration time. Just like we do when school is typically in session, we're going to give time for our educators to work together to meet the needs of students, and that includes students with disabilities. So as students who think about their assignments, and families start to think about these assignments that are be coming out on April 6th, know that our teachers at grade level and department level have been working together to provide high quality assignments and working together to modify assignments to meet students' needs for those students with disabilities. The second is that the curriculum assignments are done asynchronously, and that means that students will receive assignments and an agenda for the week on Monday, but those assignments will typically be due on Friday at the end of the week. Exceptions to that will be obvious, like things like project-based learning, long-term projects, and of course this upcoming Friday is going to be Good Friday, so there's extensions for that through the weekend and potentially into next Monday. That said, the reason that we're doing asynchronous learning and asynchronous assignments is because we recognize that every family situation is unique here, and every family is dealing with COVID-19 and the impacts on their family really differently. So it allows students and families and teachers to work together, but to do it with a lot more flexibility than they normally would. The third component is called classroom community time. It's the most important component of education, is that teachers and students can connect. But we realize doing that now looks very different. So our teachers, our staff members have been working on a variety of different platforms that they'll be using, everything from Google Hangout and Zoom, some of these video conferencing, to working with students on common documents, doing blogs together, doing chat together, just opportunities for students and teachers to connect in real time, answer questions about assignments, and help give students direct instruction and support as they go through week to week with assignments and agendas. The last part of the framework is grading and assessment. And so we're making a shift in grading assessment from your typical quantitative assessment where you might get like an 87 on an assignment to what we're going to call qualitative standards-based assessment. And what that means is that for every assignment and for every lesson, there's a state standard that students are expected to try to meet, and that the feedback now is going to be focused on how we get students to meet those standards. And that ultimately, once they meet those standards, they'll be able to earn credit for the assignment, credit for the course, credit for the grade. There's obviously going to be lots of questions regarding high school students and high school families, regarding GPA and how that impacts transcripts in the future. What you'll see in about 15 to 20 minutes, high school families will be getting a communication from high school as well that outlines specifically how grade GPA is calculated for all of our students now and going forward. Finally, if I could just take a moment to give some thank yous. I want to take a moment to recognize all of the 518 employees in Scituate Public Schools over the past few weeks, all of them as parents and husbands and educators and wives have been working together as a family and working together as a staff to try to support their local community and also their students. Their compassion, their collaboration, their commitment to our kids has been incredible in these really extraordinary times. A few highlights, if I can share them with you. So our educational staff, they've been already using a variety of platforms to provide enrichment materials for kids. Those look like everything from virtual morning announcements to birthday shout-outs to reading in Zoom classrooms with some of our youngest students. Our tech team has been incredible. They've actually passed out over 200 Chromebooks to students and families in the community, and they're now running a variety of workshops for our staff to gear them up for distance learning. Our food services staff, really since day one, has been able to evaluate the food that we have on hand and start providing food for families in need. They continue to do curbside pickup through this week and will continue through the outbreak. Our custodians, our drivers, cleaning our buses, cleaning our buildings. Our custodians will be coming back at part-time starting next week, starting on Monday, to continue to clean the buildings and continue to prepare them for hopefully a May 4th return. I want to thank our administrative assistants as well. Again, right from the beginning, helping provide information to all of our staff, to our community members, to our schools. Their work in juggling the myriad of information sources from the state and local levels to our school district themselves and getting them out to our families has been incredible. Finally, I want to thank our nurses. They've been on the front line of this outbreak really since the very beginning. They've been our local experts. They're ready and able to work with the town to provide further support if needed. And a special thanks to our nurse leader, Kelly Roach. She's been absolutely incredible, providing support to all of our nurses, all of our staff, and our school district as well. Finally, I want to recognize that while things will have to look a little bit different in the Scituate Public Schools for the next few weeks, our mission remains the same: help our students become great adults. And we'll be doing that through a variety of different platforms now. But we've got 518 staff members who are committed to provide those supports for kids, and this community is fortunate to have them. So thank you for giving me the time today.
Thanks, Ron. Well, it's very clear that there's a lot going on in the schools and a lot going on in town, and everyone is doing their best to keep things moving along. We will be posting a written summary of today's video on the town website later this afternoon. The town and its various boards and committees are trying to keep things moving via teleconferencing where possible, but we do ask everyone's patience as we are in uncharted territory. Check the town website for meeting schedules if you have a particular interest in a particular type of a meeting. This video will air on Channel 9 for the next couple of days. You can also access it by going to Scituate Community TV YouTube, and the next scheduled update will be on Monday, April 6th. We must fight this virus as a community by caring for each other, and that means staying apart from one another for the time being. Thanks for watching, and stay well.